Hello, welcome back to Emperor's Path. My name is SBJ, and I can finally say, after seven months, we are finally in the new house. It's been a very, very long road and a very, very long time without a layout. So if you're new, I used to have a loft layout that was based on Fratton, or loosely based on Fratton in Portsmouth. It was a circular layout with a small fiddle yard. And I personally feel that I overcomplicated a lot of that layout. So we decided to move house. I'll be really honest, one of the biggest factors about moving to the new house, one of the ceiling points for me, was that the loft is already kitted. So apart from the fact that it is a loft ladder to get up here, it's all boarded, it's got lighting, it's got insulation, it's got windows, which means that I can have my hobby desk up here. I do commission weathering on the side, so being able to weather and have a layout near me is something that's I haven't had for a while, and that's actually very, very nice. So we're in the loft. I'm going to do a mini tour for you in a minute, but I'll be really honest, we're still unloading, and a lot of the stuff out of shot is the dumping ground. The reason for that is because on the previous layout, a lot of my storage in the loft was all underneath the layout in racking systems. Because of the height of the loft in here, so bigger loft but shallower, it's not as high, which means that I don't have the height underneath for the storage racks that I do have. So what I needed to do was get the board in, so I knew what clearance I had for the locos on top. Then I would know how much clearance I had underneath for the racking system. The good news is that, as you can see, I've got the main storage fiddle yard in now, so when it comes to building my racking, I know it can fit under, sort of. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut parts off the top of the racking, so I'll use my angle grinder and I'll sort of cut a certain point, which means that I won't have as many shelves per unit, but I'll still have the storage space that I've been lacking. So what that means is once I've built the storage units that can go underneath here, I'll be able to clear that side of the loft. Something about the old loft that you will have never seen, never seen, is first of all, to get into the loft, it didn't have a proper ladder because of where the loft hatch was located. And I had to basically climb up a ladder and then do a pull-up into the loft, which meant A, I didn't get many visitors, which was kind of good, kind of bad. But it also meant that if you're feeling unwell or you've hurt yourself or anything like that, getting up into the loft was a very, very difficult chore. This has a purpose-built loft hatch with a fold-down ladder, so from ground to ceiling you can get up. One of the great things about that is that my little girl can come up into the loft with me. I'm extremely lucky. My daughter loves trains. She loves playing with trains, and she's missed playing with trains as much as I have. I've brought her up to appreciate that they're not as hard, durable. They're not as durable as some of the toys that she has downstairs, and she is really, really careful with them. And with some of the weathering that I've done, I always use it as a testament that my daughter's able to pick up all the stuff that I've weathered, and the weathering still sticks. So that's one of my key selling points when I'm talking to people at shows. So you're able to get from floor to roof in this loft. Second of all, as I say, it has windows, it has ventilation. The old loft was just a loft that I had boarded up and put a train set into. It was mostly storage for Christmas stuff, all the usual gubbins that you build up when you're living in a house. And then during COVID, I decided to build a layout in the loft, which was a good and bad idea. As I say, I think I overcomplicated the main part of that layout, and the fiddle yard was an aftermarket for on that. So, as promised, we're going to have a quick look at what I've already done in here, and I'm going to talk you through everything, and especially going forward with the layout. So if you're new here, you'll be starting on the same footing as a lot of people. However, there are a few previous videos where I've sort of pre-planned for what I'm building in here, so you can see me pre-building some of it in a video, and I'll put the link to it up there so you can go and have a quick look. So as I say, a lot of the loft is currently to my left here, so just to this bit here, is stuff. It's just lots of stuff. That's train storage, painting stuff, as well as normal household bits and bobs that are all to the side that need to be put away. And that's something that's, now that this frame is up, I can get on with. So having a quick look at what we've already got, we've effectively got a U-shape section all the way over here, or at least that's the baseboard frame for it. It is blowing a hoolie outside today, so the wind is so bad that I can't open the windows because it just makes too much mess, and in fact some of the windows get blown shut. In the previous videos leading up to this, you will have seen that I've been building the fiddle yard. You can see that that is now sort of in place. I do need to get some more flexible track to fill in the gaps on there, and that board that sat there is too thick to go on that section. So this section here with this board is the only section I hadn't planned for. When I put the boards in, it turned out I had an additional foot of space, which is great. I'm happy it was that way around rather than me trying to put it in and it wouldn't fit. So yeah, here we are. So this is effectively going to be my fiddle yard. As I say, in the old layout, the fiddle yard was an afterthought. It started off as just 2 lines that went around the room, and then I effectively built a fiddle yard to accommodate the different trains and stuff that I had. So this time I wanted to make sure that I had a nice big fiddle yard. So as you can see, one of the things about this loft is it's much bigger than my old layout. So my old layout was 12 by 10 foot. Whereas this one is 17 by 14, this room. Now, the first thing people might suggest is that we do a full round the room layout. Hold fire on that one for now. The main thing I wanted to do is get the fiddle yard in. There is a very, very strong chance, because I need to work for my real life job and for my weathering up here, I do need to have the space to have everything up here. So I'm gonna tell you now that round here, you can see that corner piece there, this is basically going to be a loop layout, so it will come straight back round and then it's going to come round the front here. I am not using at first, let me just clarify that, at first I'm not going to be using the full space of the loft for trains. The plan is to have it where I have this loop that comes round and comes down the front here, and a piece is going to go in there. With the option for further down the line, I'm going to add in an L shape, so it's going to go down off camera down here, and that is going to be turned into a terminus station. So I'm going to have in essence an end-to-end layout, but also a roundy round. My style of trains and what I like is I just like trains going round. I don't necessarily need to do a lot of controlling with it, but at the same time the simplicity of what I'm going to have at the front here is more scenic. And I thought, you know what, at some point I am going to want to have a station, so I'm planning to have it so that I have a nice point section, sort of like a railway triangle that comes down here, goes out and goes off camera down there. So that's where we are at the moment. Let's have a quick look at the fiddle yard so you can understand the scope of it, what I've planned and things like that. So first things first, a lot of the wood that you see in front of you, especially the plywood on top, has been saved from my old layout. Wood is expensive. It's probably one of the more expensive parts of building a new layout, is the sheer cost of the wood that you need. And as you can see, this is, I mean, it's a long stretch here. So I used a lot of the wood from the old layout to create these sections, and I'm happy with how it's turned out. I've pulled all the bits off, sanded it down, and once there's cork on top of there, you're not going to notice a lot of the impurities that are there. So yeah. Let's talk about what comes off here. So this side comes off and you've got a 3rd radius and a 4th radius piece of track there. The 4th radius goes into the back fiddle yard and the 3rd radius goes into this. Now, the plan is I am modelling the Ports Creek Junction Bridge, which, if you don't know, Portsmouth is an island, or it's classified as one, and it has a really nice scenic bridge that goes underneath the M27 and goes across water onto Portsea Island. It's a fantastic scenic piece of the layout, and I already have that sat ready to go with the bridge and the track already laid, and I'm going to be working on the scenics at that once I've got this section finished. That is currently sat at Mum and Dad's in storage from them kindly looking after it for me, but I wanted to make sure I got the fiddle yard sorted before trying to add the other section in. So the fiddle yards are both slightly different to each other, just through trying to plan different types of trains that I'd be running. So let's talk about the back one. So the back one goes into a 3-way point, which on the nearest side to me then goes into a left-hand medium radius point. That then goes off into 2 sidings down here. Middle line is just a straight line that goes to the other 3-way point that will be at the other side. And then on this side is a right hand and then a right hand medium radius point. So comes in here, and then you effectively, for each main fiddle yard, you have 6 lines. There's going to be varying levels of long trains. Now, before the additional foot was put in there, or before I found out that I had an additional foot to use, it did mean I could accommodate 9 coach and 1 loco trains, so 10 Mark 1 coaches if we're measuring in that sort of scale. So it means that I can accommodate the trains that I want in there. The fact that there's an additional foot in there that I didn't plan for makes it even better, because it means I'll have a little bit of wiggle room for as I'm trying to navigate those trains coming in and out of the fiddle yard. One thing I can say before it comes up in a question, I have checked clearances on this back line. I don't run HSTs or any of the longer longer axle bow rolling stock, so I have checked that my usual rolling stock, which is Mark 1s and Mark 2s, can go round there. Now, they'll go round there fine. I would be very cautious about putting a class 50 or a class 92 up on that corner, just in case it hits the wall, but everything else passes through there absolutely fine. So there you go, that's the first fiddle yard line. Now, on the one at the front, once again, a 3-way point, and then it goes into 2 of the longest possible lines on there, hoping to accommodate some of the larger trains on there and more of them. Once again, because there's that additional foot, this has changed and means I'll get much longer trains and more of them as well. So I'm really happy about that. The difference where this front one versus the back one is, instead of it going point and point here, it goes line and line, and then you've got point, 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 and then it matches it down the other side. So effectively my smallest trains out of everything will always be on this line. That'll be the same size, slightly bigger, even slightly bigger, and then 2 maximum longest ones there. Whereas on this one, the shortest trains will be those back 2 over there, and then you'll get longer ones in the middle and then slightly shorter ones on the outside. In the grand scheme of things, because of the sheer scale of it, it's actually better than I'd planned for it to be. So I'm very happy about that. So as you can see down there, I think I'm 12, maybe 14 pieces of flex track from meeting the fiddle yards up. As I say, I do need to get a piece of plywood that goes in there. So going down the other end, it's exactly the same layout, it's just mirrored. Now, all of my point motors are the MTB MP1 point motors. I love these because they are so simple. So they're slow action point motors, and what I really liked about them is they've got a little bit of wiggle room with how the connections work down here. They're really, really handy, and you can effectively test the point motors without having to have all your wiring set up with just a 9-volt battery, so you can check that they throw properly without having too many issues. So that's all set up down here. So as I say, I want to get all of the lines put in. I want to make sure all of the tracks have power. Then it will be working on the fiddle yard control box, which I already started in the old house, and it's just getting that sorted. So because I'm going to be having it that all of the lines throw together, so effectively this point is going to go at the same time as its mirrored point. So if you throw it to go into this siding, the other point on the same switch will go. So it means that you're doing your in and your out of each siding at the same time to save, hopefully, accidents. And because of the wiring, it means that this input, for example, will match up with the input at the other side. So let's go down to the other end, and I'm going to show you how that's going to connect to the control box eventually. This is a rough idea of how the points are all going to be lined up. So you're going to have a yellow cable going from here, and it's going into this D subunit here. I actually got the idea from Joseph, from that model railway guy. Effectively, this is the same as your normal typical computer connectors that you can get. So you've got all of the terminals here. They're all screw-link terminals. And what I'll be doing is, for example, this point's cable going into number 1 will match up. I'll trail a cable from the opposite end down there, and they'll both go into the same screw-link terminal. If it so happens that it's throwing one way and one the other, all that means is that I'll take the line from number 3 at the other end, for example, but we'll come to that. So yeah, so that's the fiddle yard and it's set up. We're going to talk about the baseboards and how it's all supported now. To clarify something as well before I go into talking about the baseboard, the reason I'm showing you all of this and it's not completely finished, I'm going on holiday next week, so I'm off to France. And I wanted to give some sort of update so you had a rough idea of where we are. I didn't think I'd have got this far. So we only moved in last week, and we've had lots of bits and bobs to do in the house, but I have managed to get some time this week to be able to build this. And the main reason for that is, like I said, all of my storage is going to be under here. So until I got this baseboard done, I didn't know where I sat with storage. So I kind of wanted to get that done. So when I come back from holiday, my first port of call is I'm going to be chopping the racking systems to the correct height so that I'm going to be able to fit them under here so I can start storing stuff. So that area over there will be clean eventually. So yeah, so that's why it's not anything complete, but I do want to show you where I stand. So let me just quickly grab the stickers for this so I can make sure I get the right numbers for you. Okay, so because a lot of the wood that I've used for the actual baseboard parts have all been done, I basically built a lot of the baseboard sections separately, so that it meant that knowing that I'm going to be moving and transporting it, I didn't want to do one giant fiddle yard. I wanted to do it in sections so I could work on it. Hence why there's originally 6 boards, all 1 foot by 4 foot long. That meant that I could accommodate the points for each fiddle yard section. So let's say there's 4 points areas for the fiddle yard. Then I could work on all of those separately, get those done, then move on to the next one. If I was going to change anything about how I've done this, I would have stopped there with the pre. Because the inside part of the fiddle yard, so effectively just the flat track sections, is a different size to what I thought I had, I wish I'd left that and just done it there. Not only because of the size, but also on one of them, I'd laid all the flat track down, I'd soldered it, had the power going underneath it, I got it all prepared. Then when I was hooking it up, it worked out that on one section I had like this bigger gap, and I was like, you know what? So I just cut all the solder wires and just moved the track up slightly so I could connect it all to save on how many joins there were going to be on the track. So that's something I would have changed. I would have done the 4-point sections and left the straight tracks completely blank, done them when I got in, measured up for however much I needed. So the planking that I used for the frames on these, so remember that they are 1 foot by 4 foot sections, it is planed smooth timber from B&Q. The thickness is 12 millimeters, the width is 44 millimeters, and the length was 2,100 millimeters, so 2 meters 10. That took far too long for me to work out. The reason I used the 12 is very lightweight, using that sort of thickness. And I knew that because they're all in smaller sections, they were still going to be quite durable, even using quite thin pieces of wood. I think it's worked out well. I effectively had to drill 3 millimeter holes, or thickness holes, for all of the screws that were going in there. And one thing that I'd recommend to anyone who's building baseboards, I mean, me personally, I'd probably go and buy kits from Tim Horn or Grange and Holder, or Bunter's Yard, Scale Model Scenery, because they're so much easier to line up. You know they're straight and all that sort of stuff. However, if you are doing it like I have, where you've got the wood, so you're using the wood, the best thing I can recommend is one of these. It's effectively a right angle jig. Now, it doesn't matter how much you check the wood when you're buying it, you will still get pieces of wood that will have a slight bend to it, a slight curve, whether that's them bowing like this or that they curve slightly so they're not completely straight. This is really good. You effectively put your 2 pieces of wood in there for your corners, and you tighten this up so it pushes against the wood. What that does is it makes sure that they are both flat at the point of the join where you're screwing into. It doesn't sound like it would be great, but once you've done a whole square of it, you're forcing the wood to straighten up, and it's been so helpful. Like, there were pieces where I was swearing because I'd have to go out and buy another piece of wood, and I was like, but what if I get another piece of wood that's bowing or anything like that? These are really good. They effectively force them to go into straight alignment and made these baseboards so much easier. And then once you start putting a little bit of weight on them, it keeps them in place. You can deal with that. So that was the baseboards that the tracks have gone on. Being really honest with you, the plyboard that is on top is a mixture of 5mm, 9mm, 7mm and 5mm, basically whatever I had left over. Luckily it all matches up, so that's why there's some pieces on here that will have cork, some pieces on here that won't have cork, and I'm not fussed about the cork. A lot of it is that I just put it on top of the really shoddy pieces that I had from before that just needed a little bit of love, and the cork was the best way to do it. So talking about the actual frame that sits underneath, so that's your normal baseboard, that's your frame. This is the part that I'd effectively saved up for, knowing that I was going to be doing this. Now I purchased plain smooth timber again, thickness 34mm, width 44, the length was 1800mm. The only reason I went for that length is simply so that I knew it could fit in my car. I had problems with the 2100mm stuff, having to go all the way through the car, and it was pressing against my windscreen just that little bit that I wasn't comfortable with it. So I went for the 6-foot pieces rather than going for the really, really long pieces and trying to save money. Now the reason I went for the 34mm thickness is I wanted the baseboards to be solid, and just to give you a rough idea, so the width is the same on these. So these are some of my leftover pieces. So that is the thickness of the baseboards. That's the thickness of the underframe. Now, I wanted to make sure that the underframe was solid. I didn't want it to have any issues with moving. And likewise, I've used much bigger screws in this. And this is really where that right angle jig really came into play and straightening pieces out. Because when I put my baseboards on top of it, there were nearly no imperfections between the baseboards and the other bits. So I was really, really happy with that. So just comparing the two, that's the thickness difference. So from a visual point of view, you've got a lot. Now, another reason I went for the thicker bit on the actual frame, the underframe that it all sits on, if I had, because woodworking is not my strong point, if I had got my measurements wrong in any way, shape or form, there was a little bit of leeway with the support pieces to hold these on top. So I had quite a bit of room for saving my butt. As it happens, it went together a lot better than I thought it would. As you can see from the other end, it's enough to support the 3rd and 4th radius bits that come out to here, and then it stops. I've got the pieces built, which you can see the right angle piece down there. That's going to be the part that brings it back round. I've got those ready. I don't need to put those in just yet. So effectively, there's no support beam for these yet. They will be done at a later date. It basically means that I've got the lines coming out and that I have enough room to put a loco on there to go in and test all the fiddle yard lines, whilst I have my continuity tester and my voltmeter, and I also have one of the DCC Concepts LED. It might be a Lays DCC, where it's basically like a little PCB board with contacts on the bottom and a little LED, and you run it along the top and it will light up, and it will tell you if it's analog, DC and things like that. It's fantastic, really, really good. However, I have a voltmeter with the audible setting, and I basically touch different parts of the tracks, make sure that there is a connection to them. If you watch any of the previous videos, I did solder up sections of the fiddle yards and do all of this testing. However, lines get knocked, tracks get dirty, it just allows me to check it and make sure it's all okay. I want to make sure that the track feeds are sorted first, and then I'll move on to the point motors. Now, I know the point motors are all in the right place. I've tested them, they're all okay. Actually sorting out the control panel is after checking all the track feeds are okay. The reason for that is because I've got a 9-volt battery with 2 wires that I know I can put on each motor to activate them, so I can test all the lines. That's fine, I can deal with that. And then I can have a day where I sit down and work on the control panel. So this is a very long video with nothing fully done, sorry. However, it's something. I have track laid in the loft. My next 2 things that I need to do for it is this piece. As you can see, it's not actually screwed down. it is the wrong thickness. It's completely the wrong thickness. So I need to sort that out. So I'm going to get some 5mm, maybe some slightly thicker. I'll work it out. Ply to go on the top of here, but that's just too thick. And that's basically filling the gap of what I didn't expect, which was an additional foot. So get that sorted. That will be one of my first purchases when I come back from a holiday, and also join all the tracks up. It'll be a priority of working on the ones at the back and moving forward, because it's harder to get into the ones at the back. So that's my next plan. So I hope you've enjoyed this. We're in the house, we have movement, we have stuff getting underway. So it's a bit of a long video. It's a lot of talking about the fiddle yard and how it looks. For me, seeing it in place it fills me with so much joy, seeing months and months of work whilst I haven't had a layout just sort of in place, and it's quite nice. Quick thing about the height as well. So the eaves up here, one thing I've done, these were much higher in my old loft. So from this section here, I don't know what you'd call that, the flat part of wall to the floor was much bigger, but then that's because my other loft was not insulated in any way, shape or form. So there was a much bigger, there wasn't underneath me is carpet and proper joists and insulation. So that obviously eats up at your floor space. So my old layout was at standing height, whereas this one, I'm sat down on my chair. Actually, I quite like it. I quite like sitting down and being able to see the layout rather than having to stand up. And what the thing I really had to try and sort out, and it was quite difficult because I was trying to work out, whilst holding pieces of the fiddle yard and balancing a piece of rolling stock on there, I was trying to gauge how high can it go, as high as it possibly can before it hits this section. So I tested a piece of rolling stock on that last part, and it was absolutely fine. So that is the highest I can have the fiddle yard without it touching the roof or the ceiling. Once I'd worked that out, because maths isn't my strong point, it really, really isn't. And if you follow the channel for a long time, you'll really know that it isn't my strong point. And whilst there's some things I can do, that is not something that I could just work out. I had to physically see it in front of me to go, that's the height it needs to be. So now that I've got that sorted, I know I can sit there. So when this bit comes around the front and goes all the way back down there so that we have a full loop, that's going to be fun trying to work that out, because the bridge that I'm modelling is a different height. So it means that the baseboards, basically I'm going to have to build a custom frame that makes that other part of the layout sit at the same height of all of these. Another reason why I wanted to make sure I got all the fiddle yard done and then work on getting those to meet up. So that's next. If you do want regular updates of everything I'm up to, my videos are few and far between. I've tried doing schedules and I'm really bad at it. So if you're new, sorry in advance. If you've been around a long time, you'll know that unfortunately I get videos out when I can, not every week. However, starting back in September, I will be doing the model rail replacement podcast with my friend James, where we talk all different kinds of things, model railway related, and we give weekly updates on what we've been up to on there. So you'll be able to see, hear, and all those various little bits. So James is the Western Signalman on YouTube. You can find my videos, his videos of all the things we get up to, as well as YouTube, Spotify. You can find the Model Rail Replacement podcast as well. So that's it from me. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button. If you have any feedback or comments that you'd like to give below, then please do by leaving a comment. And other than that, like, comment, subscribe, do the usual sort of YouTube things, and YouTube's going to suggest a video to you that it thinks you're going to like. So thank you very much. Enjoy. Bye.